Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining Astadia today. Our topic is unlocking the value of your legacy applications, also known as 5 good reasons to make legacy modernization a top priority in 2017. Just to give you a little bit of background about Astadia, we've been in business for about 25 years, and we've been doing legacy modernization projects really since 1994. That's when we did our very first legacy modernization project, and we've done scores of successful projects since then. We've worked in just about every industry vertical, as well as with many municipal, state, and federal government agencies like the Florida Department of Health and the U.S. Army. We also have a wealth of partnerships that help us with these legacy modernization projects, Micro Focus being one, Abbey Road Software being another. These are the people that provide us on occasion with some of the tools and things that make these things less expensive and less risky. Our speaker today is Craig Marble. Craig is a solution director in Astadia's legacy modernization practice. Craig's been with us for about 5 years, but overall he's spent about 25 years in the information technology industry. And most of that 25 years has been focused on legacy modernization projects. But Craig has also spent time in project management, pre-sales management, and delivery management. So he's got a very, very well-rounded view on the entire process and things relative to legacy modernization. So with Craig, with that, I am going to hand it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Greg. Again, welcome everybody to the fourth in our series, Unlocking the Value of Your Legacy Applications. We've been running this series on modernizing legacy applications and environments, and this probably should have been the first one, because this particular session is to answer one question: why should I modernize? Seems like a pretty simple question, but it's not always one that's easy to answer. So what I want to do is start out with the application lifecycle. So usually when you put an application in place, and this has been the case since we started developing business applications, is you start with really a 1.0 release, and that is the new application. The functionality isn't all there. There are some bugs, but it's stable enough to do the core processing that it needs to do. And that moves into a young application where you're fixing some bugs and you're improving the stability and adding some functionality, on into adolescent, where you still maybe have some bits and issues to deal with, but it is growing in its usefulness, on into the prime age of the application, where it is stable, proven, requires enhancements, but fundamentally sound and bug-free. And then moving into the mature, where it's getting a little long in the tooth, perhaps in some language that isn't as popular as it used to be, but it is still useful. And then in theory, you retire these applications. You bring online new applications to replace these old applications. But the key word here is theory, right? This is a theory of balance, of your balanced portfolio. And we all know that that's not really what happens, because typically what happens today is you go through these phases, these 5 phases here, where you have new, young, adolescent, prime, and mature. But instead of retiring, eventually from mature, you get to the senile stage, which is where the applications are beginning to live longer than you expected, and maybe start needing special attention to keep them operating efficiently. You know, perhaps you need to bring in special skills, things like that. And then eventually moving into what we call the zombie stage. And these are the applications that just do not seem to go away. They defy all sense and rules of reality. No matter what you might think, these applications continue to run and run and run. And there are a number of reasons for that. So if we look at these zombie applications, in most cases, these are the legacy applications. And yeah, they can require expensive and specialized hardware and software. And this could be a mainframe platform. It could be another burning hardware platform. A lot of times they do require specific skill sets that are in a pool that is rapidly diminishing as people retire. They take those skills with them out the door. And I'm not talking just about programming languages. I'm talking also about sort of the systems programming roles involved in maintaining the environment that these applications need to run in, not just the applications themselves. So there are a number of specific skill sets that can be required for any particular application. And in most cases, these applications were developed intending to live in a silo, and they still live in a silo, and they're locked in that silo. Now, they can be opened up using various means today, but it's not necessarily an easy thing to do, and it is not necessarily easy for them to participate in the digital enterprise of today. But in many cases, these same sort of zombie applications that you just would love to get rid of contain decades of valuable, proven business processes and rules. They aren't something that's easily replaced. And at the core, these are your critical, your mission-critical applications, meaning they are the bread and butter. They keep the lights on. They, perhaps are some of the applications that are your prime business function. And in many cases, they also can represent your competitive differentiator. So there are a lot of things that you have to consider when you're talking about these zombie applications. So our first seminar in this series was using methods to take the attributes of these different applications that you have and determine what to do with them, right? So if you remember this from the first one, you have this grid here, and on the left-hand side, you've got things like technical architecture, meaning does it fit in your environment? Is it expensive? Is it hard to maintain? And then you have on the bottom the business value, low being on the left side and high being on the right. So you have applications in here in the tolerate that they fit in your environment really well. They may not have a lot of business value, but they're not really causing you much pain or suffering, so you tolerate them. You have applications up here that may be more expensive, but they also have a lot of business value, and you continue to invest in those. And then you have applications here in the lower left quadrant that really are just prime zombie applications for elimination, and that is they don't fit well in your environment and they don't have very much business value. So what we're really talking about here are these applications in the lower right quadrant, and these are the applications that have a lot of value to your organization in terms of business value. Now, they may not fit well in your environment, they may be costing you money and resources, but they are important to your business. So the next question is, why modernize? Why not just replace or rewrite these applications? So when somebody asks me that, I like to use this metaphor, and that is if you think about the evolution of music, right? Something completely divorced from IT. If you think about music, the first recorded music was done on the little wax cylinders, right? And then we moved into vinyl records and magnetic tape. From there into cassette tapes, 8-track tapes. Actually, I think 8-track came first. And then we moved into CDs and MP3 players, and now we've moved into streaming, and who knows what's coming next, right? Streaming seems like it's the ultimate, but I guarantee you there's something else coming. But my point here is that whenever the format changed or the media changed, you didn't send Beyonce or the Beatles back into the recording studio to re-record their albums, right? So whether it was the Brahms or the Beatles or Beyonce, the music didn't change, just the media on which that music was delivered. And this is really a classic example of reuse, and one that really applies very well to your legacy applications that have value. So from our point of view, legacy applications do have an important place in the digital enterprise. Modernizing a proven application is less expensive than rewriting or replacing it. So you can replace it with a package. Most times, though, there's functionality gaps, and that functionality gap needs to be filled a lot of times with specialized consultants who come in and fill those gaps with you with specialized programming. Or if you wanted to rewrite it, then of course you have to go through the exercise of doing a requirement study to analyze what the application is doing today, and then write up requirements to make sure the new application does that. And once you have delivered it, what do you have? Essentially, you have the same functionality in a different language that in itself is going to be legacy in a pretty short time, because even today you hear people talk about legacy Java and legacy C. So, if every language eventually is going to become legacy, and just because they are considered legacy doesn't mean that they're bad. It's also a much reduced risk method of getting your desired outcome. Something like 40% or more of rewrite projects fail. It's just a fact of life. We have customers that we work with after they have failed in a rewrite. So it does happen, and it happens quite frequently. The other reason why you would want to modernize is maximizing the value of what you put into these applications. So these applications weren't free, right? I mean, they cost money for you to develop over years and years. So you need to maximize that. You don't want to just throw it all away just so you can have something shiny and new. It doesn't make a lot of good business sense. It also allows you to deliver results more quickly. So anytime you try to rewrite or replace an application, you're going to have to test all of the functionality, right? You got to test every aspect of that application. With the modernization approach, not only do you not have to do so much coding and analysis in terms of requirement studies, et cetera, but you don't have to test every single piece of logic. The logic is proven, the logic is there. You only have to test the aspects that change, and many times we're talking about calls to the new operating system, or we're talking about other features that are related to a different platform, such as a new database. So you can deliver results much more quickly. And believe it or not, modernizing legacy applications does support cloud strategies. It is within the realm of possibility today to run many of your legacy applications in the cloud. That's no longer something that is a nice to have. That is, it's here now. And then, of course, one of the better reasons, other than these more obvious ones, such as reducing risk and cutting costs, is being able to integrate with a lot of the newest technologies. And one of them I'm going to talk about is augmented reality. And you never think of augmented reality and legacy applications as working together, and why, but we'll show you why. So modernizing, why modernize? Well, a really good reason is leveraging what you have. I mean, it's just good, sound business. But some of the more exciting things about modernizing is all of the other non-IT aspects of it, such as the marketing and the customer services and the supply chain and logistics aspect. And in fact, Greg Root, who runs our marketing here at Astadia, is going to chime in here and talk about what it means for him in terms of legacy modernization. So Greg, I'm going to hand it over to you for a second.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Craig. Yeah, I just wanted to, mention that, we're kind of in the 2017 budget cycle at this point, and everybody's trying to position their key projects as priority projects. And sometimes that means that you really have to get alignment from the other C-level executives in your organization. And having been in the marketing world for a little bit over 30 years at this point, yeah, I would really encourage you to think about how valuable that data in your mainframe system is to, for example, your marketing department. A lot of marketing departments now are investing in, advanced technologies like, DMPs or data management platforms. But within your mainframe, you probably have 30 years or maybe more of buyer histories, and from that you can discern buyer preferences, their patterns of buying. And when you want to start creating persona from a marketing standpoint so that you understand kind of who you're talking to, what better source for creating those personas than real customers over an extended period of time where you can understand their preferences and patterns. You know, you know, the value of that marketing data, obviously depending on what industry you're in, can really be you know, pretty astronomical. I like to say that if you really dive into that 30 or plus years of information and analyze it properly, you can probably predict the future. And the same thing is true with customer services. If you've been, you know, handling customer service transactions within your mainframe system, you know, again, you have, you know, years worth of repair orders or support needs. And there's really two things you can do with this. You know, first is that if you can make this data available to your support agents quickly and easily, they can provide a significantly higher level of personalized service. They can see the entire history on their screens when they connect to a customer or a caller, and just provide a level of service that, quite frankly, is almost unheard of right now. And I just, at a very personal level, many years ago, I was working for a telecom hardware manufacturer, driving their services marketing organization. And like many vendors, services revenue was probably 30% of our total income, but it represented 75 to 80% of our profits. So it was a very important business. And we at one point dove into our mainframe data and we pulled all the service records out. And after spending a couple of months analyzing it all, we came up with a set of predictive analytics so that we could go to our salespeople and say, yeah, your target is to renew that service contract, but we think they're really interested at this point in buying an entirely new telecom system. And as we began to roll that out through the sales organization, we discovered we were about 80% accurate in terms of knowing who was more likely to buy a whole new system versus who was likely to simply renew their contracts. So again, as you're trying to make legacy modernization a priority within your company for 2017, I really encourage you to think through how that data can be used and leveraged by, again, marketing, customer services, your supply chain logistics people, your planning people. Historical data like that is just incredibly valuable, and truly everybody within the company will benefit when that data is easily accessible.
Yeah, and you know, I have a couple spies at the Gartner show this week in Orlando, and everything that I get back is it's all about trend analysis and real-time analysis, right? So what's trending and analyzing it in order to predict what's going to happen next. And so, as you mentioned before, having this information about buying patterns, if you take a look at trend analysis and match it up with the history of what your customers have been doing, you can then create marketing programs that say, okay, this is really in right now. Maybe we should submit a campaign for this particular product to this group of customers based on that information and their buying patterns. So it really is powerful stuff.
Exactly.
A little scary, but powerful, powerful stuff. So you're right. Everyone benefits when the data is easily accessible. So, so where does legacy fit in the new digital world? Well, the example I talked about earlier, I was going to talk about augmented reality. So I think by now everybody knows what augmented reality is, and that was due to the Pokemon craze, where people began to understand that augmented reality integrates the real world and the virtual world by overlaying what you're seeing with data that it gets from external sources. So, for example, the top image here is from Terminator, right? You're able to take a look at a motorcycle, and it brings up, you know, all the information about that motorcycle or a car or whatever. So it uses systems like the iPad or any mobile device, HoloLenses, any of those VR headsets, to record the position of where you are in the world, and then present an overlay relative data to that location and what you're looking at. So for example, why is this important? Well, it gives you instant contextualization of what it is that you're looking at. So you're not going to look at charts and graphs, right? People understand what they see, right? We're talking about a what you see is what you get environment that gives you a clear picture of your reality, and then overlays that with information that is pertinent to what your task is or what your job is. So the net result being enabling your teams to work better out in the field, and sending the data to those that need it just when they need it. And so here's a story of where we see this, and we got this idea, I don't know, about a year or so ago. About 10 years ago, we did a modernization project for the City of Miami Fire and Rescue. And essentially, it was a mainframe migration, moving their 911 call center application from a mainframe environment to a Windows environment for all of their fire and rescue operations. And this was, like I said, maybe a little more than 10 years ago, and it's been working really well. And so we were thinking about, ways that we can improve their daily lives. And in fact, when we did this before, one of their corporate sponsors said, gosh, I can't wait to start sharing this with other devices. And well, here is the perfect example. So we have this idea of integrating and exploiting new technologies like augmented reality to provide visual cues for those rescue folks and first responders out in the field with information that is pertinent to them, such as where are the fire hydrants? Maybe I can't see it. Maybe it's around the corner. What are the valve size? What's the water flow? Is this one under maintenance? Is it available? And what other assets or threats are hidden from sight? So imagine, if you will, you are a first responder and you are responding to an emergency call, and you have a mobile device. In this particular case, it's a mock-up of an iPhone. And so you're looking at the real world, and overlay on that real world are all of these symbols which represent different things. For example, a symbol could represent a fire hydrant, and then information about the water flow, or whether that fire hydrant is under maintenance, whether it's working well. You could also have visual cues, such as here is this is a gas line. So this is something that's really important for you to consider when you're trying to put out that fire. And maybe you have power lines that you have to consider. So all of this information that is not readily available today could be easily available with some simple integration technology, including things like this little radar scope down here, which says, okay, I am here at this dot, so the best available fire hydrant with a certain amount of capacity is in this location, and so you can see relative to where you are, where you need to go. So all of this is really cool stuff. So how do you make it work? Well, this is how we make legacy work with augmented reality. So it's actually not as difficult as you might think, and it's all made possible by the cloud. Now, actually, it's not true. You can do it without the cloud, but the cloud makes it so much more easier that it doesn't make sense to do it without a cloud environment. So here you have an in-the-field resource, and they're working with their mobile device, whether it's an iPad, an iPhone, or some sort of Android device with the augmented reality application loaded on it. And that device gets information from satellites, gets geolocation information. So that device then uses a cell signal or a Wi-Fi signal, depending on your particular environment and how you want to use it, to connect to a cloud resource. And this cloud resource does essentially all of the traffic cop work and all of the organizing. So this device says, okay, I'm at this location, what do I need to know? So that data resides, in this particular case, within the City of Miami Fire and Rescue legacy system. It has information about all the fire hydrants, where the fire hydrants are located, what the flow is, when the last time was maintenance, when was the last time maintenance was performed. All of this information to help in the field. And that functionality and data is coming from the legacy application. and it just gets mashed up here in the cloud and then sent back down to the device and is interpreted as lines and icons. So it's really a very powerful collection of fairly simple technologies that's just applying it in new ways. And again, this is a way of reusing and extending the life and the value of that legacy application that, you know, at one time was considered a zombie application. So, you know, it works well. So if you think about it, why would this be important? I mean, it sounds cool, but, you know, what's the real application here? Well, you know, it's not just for fire and putting out fires. If you think about it, as we have seen recently on the southeast the U.S., some disasters can drastically change the landscape, right? So you may look up and what you see is nothing representative of what was there before, and no landmarks, no signs or anything to say what is underneath you, right? Where the power lines are, where the gas lines are, et cetera, et cetera. So with the augmented reality integrated with the legacy functions, your first responders are able to visualize these things, such as the areas that may have the highest likelihood of having people in need. Hidden emergency assets. You know, you need a certain asset, but you can't find it because the landscape is so distorted. Using something like this and coordinates and GPS, you can say, okay, here is this asset. It may not look like it's underneath here, but it's underneath this pile of debris, things like that. And of course, as I mentioned before, also hidden threats. Some of the other places you could use in technology like this, and these are just, you know, some pretty obvious ones, are utilities, right? Your utility company finding, identifying your underground assets and your hidden assets, or avoiding certain things like gas lines when you're working with telephone lines and power lines, et cetera. In the oil and gas industry, you can imagine them being able to use this to view the landscape through your iPad, but superimposed on that information that shows where your assets are, right? Where your oil fields lie within that landscape to help you decide what's the best way to come at it, what's the best place to put my oil rig, et cetera, et cetera. It can also help with pipeline integrity and maintenance, meaning you come up to a pipeline and you immediately have information about that pipeline at your fingertips while you're looking at it. For state and local governments, easing the maintenance and management of assets and landmarks, and then, of course, we talked about the emergency response and public safety. So a lot of places where this could fit in. So let's talk about another case, which is a little different than augmented reality, but similar, and that is taking your legacy applications and interfacing it and mashing it up with wearable technology. And this is something that we've also done. So the story here is that we came up with a storyline that, let's say you're a claims agent, a claims processor, et cetera, and you are asked to go out in the aftermath of something like a hurricane and start doing claims initiations for your customers. So with something like Google Glass, and I know Google Glass in its former state that no longer exists, but I guarantee you wearable technology is here to stay, and I guarantee you that there's going to be some device that you wear and look through. It's not going to be Google Glass as it was, but it will be similar. So we took Google Glass, and if you're in this situation where you're out in the field and needing to initiate claims, with the Google Glass you could take pictures, record video, record conversations with your claimants, and dictate notes that will be translated into text in order to initiate the claims process. And I'll do all this while your hands are free. So in other words, just touching the side of the Google Glass to take pictures, to start videos, and to upload everything to the computer systems to actually initiate the claims process. And this works exactly the way it did in the augmented reality. So you've got your folks in the field, people wearing these wearable devices that use web APIs to interface to a cloud resource. And that cloud resource can either be the legacy application, or it can be connected to a legacy application that maybe is on an on-premises data center. But this piece right here in the middle where the cloud takes over is what makes it possible, and that is uploading pictures, the audio to text, things like that, the videos, and then mashing it up with the existing legacy claims processing application. So again, the cloud is what makes this so easy to do, and it was extremely easy. And it is something that we've done a couple years ago. So we actually did a live demo of this starting in 2014, and it's kind of hard to see, but so what we would do is my colleague would take a picture through the Google Glass and upload it, and then I would put in a claim number, and my laptop here is hooked up to the network internet and accessing a COBOL legacy application running. In this case, it was also running in the cloud, and so he would take pictures and dictate, and then literally seconds later, I was able to put in the claim number, and it would bring back name, address, the picture of the damage, the text that he had dictated, etc. And it just shows, again, the power of reusing legacy and mashing it up with new technologies. So to sum it up, modernization is not a choice. It no longer is a choice. It's a matter of survival. So there are the the usual suspects, and the I guess you would say the more boring aspects of modernization, and that is reducing your cost and your risk, costs associated with legacy platforms, burning platforms, and risk associated with diminishing skills pool. But it is a matter of survival, because you need to protect your existing revenues by retaining your existing customers. And if you don't modernize, your customers are going to go somewhere else. It's just a fact. I mean, I've done it. I've done it to banks, and I've done it to other companies. If they don't modernize in a way that I feel meets my needs, then I'm off to somebody else. You can also use it, as Greg mentioned, generating higher returns and expanding into new markets by putting a new light on the data that you have and the processes that you have. That is something that is very exciting, I know, to a lot of the sales and marketing folks. And then, of course, meeting the demands for demanding user experience, and that is customers want what they want when they want it. It can be 3 o'clock in the morning. I expect to be able to go to my bank and do what I want to do through my phone or through my iPad or however I want to. Consumers are very demanding these days. And it also, by modernizing what you have, will help you compete more effectively in the digital economy. Because if you don't modernize, you essentially are putting your business at risk. So with that, I will open it up to any questions that anybody might have.
Yeah, and Craig, I just want to add a little bit to your summary there, because I think you did a good job. But again, coming from the world of marketing and customer services, again, I think everybody understands that modernizing a legacy system will save significant amounts of money, and it will certainly reduce the risks to the enterprise. But I think the real value in doing this project is getting very creative about what you can do with the data that's in your legacy system, because so many people can use it, and it sometimes requires very out-of-the-box kind of thinking, like your walkthrough of the augmented reality product. But it's those kinds of ideas and that kind of thinking that really generates a lot of support for legacy modernization, type of projects, and it kind of helps move the entire IT, organization into that, almost a consultant role rather than, being sort of the technology provider role. It does require some creative thinking, but sometimes you can really hit on an idea like augmented reality that can truly differentiate you in the market and really give you a differentiation that will last for years. I mean, it'll take people a long time to figure out what you've done and how you did it and how they can replicate it. So, one of the best reasons I can think of to do legacy modernization is really around the kind of innovation that data and can create within your organization. And Craig, at this point, we don't have any questions. I guess we did a really good job today. So I don't see anybody raising their hands. So I would just like to say thank you to everybody for attending today. Certainly look us up at astadia.com should you have any questions regarding your legacy modernization. Thank you.
Thank you.